Hey everyone, welcome to Aspire. In today's tutorial, we're going to talk about how to get started with Aspire and how to just get things configured and get your first budget up and running. So to get things started, I've downloaded a copy of the spreadsheet from the website. I've opened it up, and the first thing I am greeted with is the Getting Started guide. This is just a collection of information that overviews some basic functions of Aspire and some of the features that are included in it. I highly recommend that you read this as you get started. And this is also, if you get stuck somewhere or have other questions about other features in Aspire, this is a really good place to reference. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and start configuring our budget. And to do that, I'm going to go to the Configuration tab. When I come to the Configuration tab, you see there's a lot of different stuff going on here. So I'm going to try to walk through all the different things on the page here as we get going. I'll start by mentioning out in the top right hand of this page, there's an option for highlighting all editable fields and tables in Aspire, and that's on by default. And what that does is highlight every field and also table header in Aspire if those areas are meant to be modified by the user. Because Aspire is a spreadsheet, lots of the cells have custom formulas or other data in them that is not meant to be modified. And by having this option enabled, especially early on as you get used to things, will help you see some of the areas that that you're meant to edit, and it'll keep you from editing areas that aren't supposed to be edited. So that's on by default. I highly recommend you leave that on again while you get used to things. So I'm going to move over now to this strip of data here across the top, which are 3 cells. The first one is monthly income, and this will be a rough value of your monthly income that will help you prepare your budget down below. Over to the right of that, there is a metric for a value that says to allocate and budget, and this number is basically what you have left to budget. So if you estimate your monthly income and you fill out categories and amounts below, this amount tells you just how much you have left to budget given your income. So we try to get this number as close to 0 as possible without going negative. And then over to the right of that, you can see that there's a value for your estimated 6-month emergency fund. This is useful when you're saving up for an emergency fund, and it's calculated just by adding up the numbers here below and figuring out and doing a formula to calculate out what that would be over a 6-month period. This is just an estimated value to kind of help you out as you try to prepare and add that safety net into your finances. Alrighty, so I'm going to go ahead and update my monthly income to be $3,200. So you can see when I did that, my amount to still allocate in my budget went up, which is great. So I've got a little over $700 to allocate in my budget. So I'm going to look down through here and see, just based on the defaults, if there's anything that I want to change. And there is. I would like to change this value just to be mortgage. And my mortgage is, I'm going to say $1,300. So these values are completely flexible. They can be updated as you get things set up in your budget. Once you start adding transactions, which we'll do later, it's not advised to change these values just because of the way that they're in there, and then that you don't want to go back and modify any existing transactions and have new select new things from the drop down. But you'll see how that works later, and I'll mention it then as well. I also see that I don't have a category here for yearly bills, so I'm going to create a new category group by selecting this filled in star, and that'll tell the sheet that I'm creating a header or a category group, and I'm going to give it a name. So yearly bills. Because this is a group, I don't need to give it any monthly amounts or goal information, so I can move on to the next line, and then I'm going to select the outline star to indicate that I want to add a category. And my category is going to be my car insurance. I pay that every year, and since I pay this every year and it's not tied directly to monthly expenditures, I'm going to give this a goal. So my goal target is $1,000, we'll say, and then I'm going to save Just to be on the safe side, I'm going to save about $100 a month in that over the course of my budget. So that looks pretty good. I've still got one monthly bill that I need to add in, and to do that, I would like to shift down the values that are there already. So I'm just going to copy by selecting and doing Control C or right clicking and copying the data that I want to move. I'm going to click one cell below and paste that data in. And you can see I've just shifted everything down by one cell. And I'm going to modify this existing cell at the top here that was an extra one to student loan. And I'm going to say that's about $300 a month to pay. Okay, so I'm happy with my categories and my monthly amounts that I've allocated. I'm happy with the goals that I've given just a handful of the categories because they're long-term funds or yearly bills, or they're not directly tied to a monthly outflow. I can see that in my to allocate in budget field, I've got a little over $9 left, which is pretty close to zero. So I'm happy with that. So I'm happy with these categories and these amounts. So I'm done working in this area. Now I can move over to my accounts. So I've got two basic accounts that are in here already. I don't want to keep these as the current name just because they're not very descriptive, but they're there for examples. So I can modify them to actually be real accounts. So I'm going to say I have a Wells Fargo checking account, and then I have a Citi card, and I also have another bank account that I'm going to add in, and I'm going to give this an emoji here just because so it's really easy to find from the list when I select it later. And I'm going to say that this is my my Fidelity checking. Okay, so these are my accounts. I'm happy with those. I've got them modified the way that I want. They're descriptive. They've got the names on them that make them easy to define. So I'm good to go there. So I'm done with this page for now. You may notice we didn't touch net worth categories down here in this particular video. That's totally fine. There's another video on that that's out there that dives more into how to set up your net worth calculations. So I'm done with configuration, which is great. So I'm going to move on over to the dashboard now. So over on the dashboard, this will be probably your most referenced view in Aspire, just because of the data that it aggregates and how it pulls everything together. So on the left-hand side, I have an overview of everything about my budget. I can see that my available to budget value is currently zero. I haven't spent anything, and that value is zero, and I have no pending transactions. I also have not initialized my accounts yet, so all of those values are zero. And the same for all my categories. They're also zero. You will see a small purple flag next to those categories that we set up a goal for. So that little purple flag indicates that we have a goal set up for these particular categories, which is great. And then over on this right-hand side, this is how I view specific information about a category. So I can get some metrics on it. I can see what I've budgeted last month, what I spent last month, and we'll come back to that a little bit later. So the first thing I need to do in order to keep setting up my budget is I actually need some money that I can budget. And the way I do that is by initializing my accounts to have initial values. So to do that, I'm going to go to the transactions page. You'll see on the transactions page, there's just a little bit of information around the top. There's a couple of helpful drop downs and clickers just to help me see account balances or category balances, and then my activity kind of in a trends chart over time. But that'll be more useful as you add more transactions. You also see that there's an accounts last reconciled on section. I've not reconciled anything here, but I will later, and that you'll get an idea of how that works. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to set up my accounts with some basic funding. So I'm going to go in with today's dates. I know I've got 3 accounts, so I'm going to go ahead and put in 3 dates. And I have 2 checking accounts. So the first checking account, I had $1,500 in it. And then the other one I had $1,700. And then my third account was a credit card, so it's going to have an outflow because it's a debt. So it has $400 currently as the balance on it. Um, when adding money into Aspire to budget, we always pick available to budget as the category, and that dumps everything into that available to budget category you saw on the dashboard. And we'll go back there in just a moment. So now I'm going to pick an account. So this money goes to Wells Fargo, this money goes to the Fidelity account, and this credit card value is associated with the Citi card. And just as a memo, I can say this is my Initialize account, and that just is for my reference later on if I wanted to know more about why this was added. These transactions are cleared because they're initial values, so I'm just going to click OK for all of those. Okay, so we've got our accounts initialized with initial balances. So if I go back to the dashboard, you'll see that I have $2,800 total to budget spent this month. That will be it's picking up off of the credit card there that I added an outflow for. That's kind of a one-time thing. You won't be initializing accounts more than once. So that will show up there for now over the course of this month. And then down below, I can see that I have these account balances that have been updated based on the money that I added to them on the transactions page. So this you may notice that if I add $1,500 and $1,700, that would technically be $3,200, which is not what's in the available to budget section. That's because I had a $400 debt. So that number I'm actually not available to budget because it's money that I don't have. So 3,200 minus 400 is the 2,800 that you're seeing here. So that's how much I have to budget, which is great. So my next step is to actually put money in categories. And I'm going to do that by going over to the category transfers page. Okay, so the category transfers page is how I move money from one category to another throughout all of Aspire. This will be a really handy tool as you allocate funds in your categories. So to get started, I'm going to look up at the top here, and I see that I've got the dining out category. It's just the first category in the list selected. What I normally like to put in this category every month is $250, and that's that value highlighted in blue. And then this number beneath tells me how far I am away from that goal. So because the value in this category is 0, I'm exactly $250 away from filling that category to the monthly amount that I like to have in there. So I'm going to go ahead and set up a few of these categories so you can see some transfers happen. So I'm going to fill that category up, and I'm going to move money from available to budget to dining out. And there we go. You can see I'm updated. My category is completely funded. I don't have any extra money in there because it would show a positive number if I did, and I'm not lacking any money in this category, which is why I'm balanced out exactly to 0. You can see if I added a little bit more and overfunded, you would see that my category is overfunded by $10. But I'm happy with the $250 there. My available to budget number changed just a little bit based on the money that I've taken out of available to budget and put into a different category. So I'm going to do a few more of these so you can see how that looks. I'm going to add another date. I'm going to go ahead and fill this out, and I'm going to pick groceries, and then this little helper at the top, if I pick groceries, will tell me how far I am away from funding it. So I'm 375 away from funding it, so I'm going to go ahead and put 375 in that category, and now my category is funded. I'm going to pick next a category that had that had a goal associated with it. So my car insurance fund that we set up earlier was a category that we had a goal in. So you'll see when I do that, my monthly allocation, remember we set it up as $100 a month we like to put in this category. And as from meeting the goal entirely, I'm still $1,000 away from meeting that goal. And that's to be expected. The car insurance isn't due for about another year, so $100 a month over the course of a year will certainly get us to that amount, which is great. And you can see up at the top, I've got a little indicator. This purple flag shows up again to tell me that I am working with a goal right now, and that's just for my awareness. So let's move some money into this category. We put in $100 a month there, according to this blue number. And we put that in, we take that from available to budget and put it into car insurance. So you can see this value is updated from negative 1,000 to negative 900, and that's because I've allocated $100 towards that goal, which is what we expected. And now if I go back over to the dashboard, you'll see that I've put money in the dining out category, which is great. So I see my $250 there. I get this little green check mark, which tells me that my category is fully funded. And this value will change over time. As you spend money, this will be a pie chart that kind of diminishes and changes over time, and I'll show you that in a little bit. And then you can see I budgeted $250 in this category. So same thing for groceries, and then we also put some money in car insurance down here towards the bottom. And you'll see that my goal indicator is a little bit different there because I'm $100 out of 1,000. So I've only made it about 10% of the way there, which is why you see a much smaller pie chart, and it's kind of only very, very, very slightly filled, and that's because of that progress towards the goal. Okay, so I've added some money to a few categories, and now let's spend a little bit of that money. So I'm going to go over to the transactions view again, and to add a transaction, I'm going to say that I decided I wanted to go out to lunch today, and I spent $12 at lunch. So I spent that money from the dining out category, and the account, I actually spent that on my credit card. So this was lunch. So I can give that a memo, and you can put in a location or a restaurant name there if you like, just for help. And when I go over and select cleared, now I can do a couple of different things here. If this value is pending in my bank account, I can select the little circle, and that will indicate that this is a pending balance, or I can click OK. I'll show you a couple of different other helpful items about this page. Because this is highlighted in yellow because of the value that I've selected here from this drop down. And that's just a helpful tool. As you select different things, you can highlight the categories that match with your selection, just so they're a little bit easier to find if you end up skimming through and kind of reviewing your transactions list. I'm actually going to set this to be blank for now, so that nothing is highlighted. Now if I go back to select a pending transaction, you'll see that I highlight this in a blue color. And that just reminds me when I come back to this page that I've got pending transactions that I need to take a look at. And this is particularly helpful if you go somewhere to a restaurant and you leave a tip, and your initial value might be a little bit different from the tip towards the end, or if just you want to review that to make sure that the tip was taken out correctly. For me, I'm okay with the $12 value, so I'm going to actually leave that as okay, and that's fully cleared, and I'm done with that. The last option in the drop down is this little star, and that's really helpful because that marks a reconciliation point in your budget, in your transactions. And what a reconciliation point is when you've gone through your account balances as well as looked at your transactions in Aspire, and you've reconciled things. Those numbers are exactly the same. Your account balances match up with what they are in Aspire. So as an example, if I go back to the dashboard, my credit card was updated because of the $12 that I spent. So now I have $412 on my credit card as opposed to the $400 that we just started at the beginning. So if I were to log into the Citi account and actually look and see that was $412, I would know that My accounts and transactions are balanced. I'm not missing any money. I'm not missing any transactions anywhere, and that's a really good place to be in. And I can mark a reconciliation point in my budget for that. Reconciliation points are helpful for when you maybe miss a transaction or you type something in incorrectly. You'll know when you add in a reconciliation point and you see this gray bar, you'll know that everything above that was correct. So if you've made a mistake or there's an error, it would have to be below that line. So they're really helpful if you find errors or are missing transactions. They're really helpful so you don't have to scour back days and weeks into your budget to find out where those are. So I recommend reconciling often. I reconcile every week. You can do it a little bit sooner, a little bit later than that, but that's totally up to you. Okay, so I've added a reconciliation point, and I'm going to pick a date for that. And so I picked today's date. Okay, so I'm all set. And you'll see this account reconciled on updated to tell me when I last reconciled all my accounts. So that shows today's date, which is great. If this value gets to be more than 2 weeks past, if we're 2 weeks overdue, you'll see a red banner up here reminding you that you need to reconcile your transactions and accounts. Okay, so if I go back to the dashboard, you'll see that my dining out category was updated. So I spent $12. So 250 minus the $12 is indeed 238. And my little pie chart has updated to show me that I've just got a little bit of a sliver missing. And that's just an overall progress for the category with how much how much I've spent. And then over on the side here, you'll see that I've actually spent $12. So that updates as we go. Over the course of a month. So the spent values and budgeted values reset every month based on how you set your budget. So when the next month rolls around, these will reset back to zero until you do category transfers and until you actually add transactions for that month. Okay. So over on the right hand side, you can see I've got a little bit more information here now that we've added in some data. My category has 95.2% remaining, so I spent about 5% of that when I added a transaction for lunch. And then I can see down towards the bottom my outflows by account. So I spent $12 on that Citi credit card in this particular account, which is selected as dining out, or excuse me, this category, which is dining out for right now. So that's kind of the basics of getting started with Aspire. In this particular video, we've set up our configuration with our categories and our monthly amounts and any goals that we have for those categories. We configured accounts to match up with your accounts. We added initial funds to those accounts based on your current account balances. Then we funded a couple of categories, so you see how that works. And then we logged a transaction, and you could see the live updating that happens on the dashboard because of that. So that's kind of the A to Z of the very basics of budgeting with Aspire. I hope this has been helpful. There's a bunch of other features in Aspire that will help you as you continue on your budgeting journey. If you'd like to have videos made on any other features or functions, or if you have questions, I'm always available on our Reddit channel, and you can find a link to that here at the end of the video and also down in the details. So we're super happy that you're here. I hope this has been helpful, and until next time.